Chewy, soft. Rất là sure.
Hey, it's Seraphin, and today we're making shiny and chewy bagels. In this recipe, we're only going to be using 5 ingredients for the main dough: bread flour, water, yeast, salt, and brown sugar. Except for the brown sugar, this ingredient list is actually quite similar to a lean dough recipe, such as one for baguettes, but it's lower in hydration than a lot of the lean doughs. And most importantly, bagels are boiled before they're baked, which gelatinizes the outer layer of the bagel dough, resulting in a shiny and chewy outer crust when baked. This outer crust is a key part of what makes a bagel, well, a bagel. It limits the expansion of the dough in the oven, which gives the bagel a dense inner texture and that shiny crust. Now, because this recipe for bagels is very simple, unlike an enriched dough that has a lot of rich ingredients, we're relying on the fermentation process to add flavor to the bagel. That's why we use Poolish as a convenient way to add these complex aromas and tastes. On the other hand, the Tangzhong is added to improve the texture of the bagel, making it softer, and it also helps keep the bagel soft for longer. It makes the dough easier to handle as well. Both Tangzhong and Poolish are very simple and easy to make. I've made them a million times, so I won't go into detail on how to make them here. For more information, you can check out our previous video on Poolish and Tangzhong, link in the description box. Anyways, I'm just going to quickly go through the process of making Poolish here. For this recipe, we mixed together 100 grams of bread flour, 100 grams of water, and 1/4 teaspoon of instant yeast. We left it in the fridge overnight, but you could also leave it out at room temperature, and it should take about 5 to 6 hours, maybe a bit faster. This timing, like everything to do with fermentation, may vary depending on your room temperature and local climate, so keep an eye on the Poolish. And when it looks like this, super bubbly and a bit deflated, just a bit deflated, then you're good to go. That's great. The other ingredient we need to make in advance, aside from Poolish, is Tangzhong. In this recipe, we use 75 grams of water and 15 grams of flour, combined well until there are no lumps, and then while stirring continuously, we put it atop the stove and heat it to around 60 to 65 degrees Celsius. So I've already made that here, and we've already cooled this down so we can add it to our main dough. Great, now that we have our Poolish and our cooled down Tangzhong, we can immediately start making our main dough. So, in our stand mixer's bowl, we're going to add in the Poolish. Yeah, I'm just gonna get it out first. So here's our beloved Poolish. I'm just gonna pull it in. Get ready for this. This looks really good. Alright, now we're going to be adding the Tangzhong, and it's already cooled down. Make sure it is cooled down before you add it. Don't want it to accidentally cook something. So I'm just going to scrape it in with the spatula as well. Now it's time to add 235 grams of bread flour. This recipe does call for high protein flour. The extra protein turns into gluten, which helps strengthen the dough, meaning more volume and a better rise. So just rub that in. After that, 6 grams of salt. This is roughly 1.7% of the total flour weight. Salt is quite important since it helps tighten the gluten structure in the dough as well as enhance the flavor of the bagel. As I've mentioned in previous videos, too little salt can make the dough overproof very quickly since salt inhibits yeast. With bagels, this can result in a dough that collapses after being boiled since the yeast grew too rapidly and the dough overexpanded. Too much salt on the flip side can inhibit the yeast too much, resulting in a stunted fermentation and a very dense dough that leads to a small bagel. Not a good thing. So we keep to this amount and have had pretty good results so far. Following salt, we add 10 grams of brown sugar. You could use regular table sugar, but getting some brown sugar in the dough will help make the bagels a bit darker in color due to the molasses. Brown sugar also adds a bit more flavor to the bagels, so that's another reason why we're using it. This amount of sugar, by the way, is about 3% of the total flour weight, which is a normal amount of sugar for bagels. According to a research paper, to add more sugar above 3% might result in a bagel that ferments too fast, as well as lead to a crust that's too dark. On the other hand, too little sugar below 2% might lead to a pale crust. So we think this amount is just right. And finally, 35 grams of water. Okay, we're done with the ingredients. Now we just pop the bowl into the stand mixer, lock it in. Then we're gonna let this combine for about 2 minutes on a low speed. Before taking the speed up to a medium-high and letting it run for about 7 to 8 minutes or until the dough is smooth, cohesive, and passes the window pane test. All right, so we've kneaded the dough enough. It's time to do the final test on it. It already looks pretty good, pretty smooth, pretty cohesive. We want to make sure the dough is properly mixed, not under or over mixed, since both result in inferior bagels. Undermixing especially can give you small and dense bagels with a gummy texture, so make sure it passes the window pane test. So just take a small bit, and then we're going to try to spread it out thin enough so that we can see light through it. Okay, so that means it's passed the test. Let's move on. We're going to dust our work surface with a bit of flour now. And also dusting our hands. And using our scraper, we're going to turn the dough out onto it. So I'm just going to roll the dough. It is a low hydration dough, so should be pretty non-stick. Yeah, there you go. See? Non-stick to the scraper. Put it on there. And clean up the sides. Okay. Good. Okay. Okay, so we've rounded the dough into a boule now, just to get it more even, which is really simple motions. I'm just gonna round it a bit more with my palms, nice, quick, and easy. Get that nice surface tension, and it looks smooth, doesn't it? After that, we're going to put it inside this glass bowl here. Just drop it in. Not really using oil because we found that it doesn't really stick much, so oil or not, it's not really necessary. You can just scrape it out with a bench scraper later. Okay, so I'm going to cover it now with the silicone cover. Until it's drying out. All right, so now it's in the glass bowl and we've covered. We're going to let it ferment for about an hour or until the dough doubles in size. Again, this timing may vary depending on your room temperature and climate. Okay, so it's been an hour since we left the dough to bulk ferment, and it has more than doubled in size, as you can see. It is quite warm here, so this is unsurprising. It's fine, it's perfectly fine though, because it is still just the bulk fermentation, so we're good. Okay, we're just gonna continue on. Before I take it out, I'm just gonna lightly dust the work surface as well as my hands. Ooh, look at that. It's really lovely. So this is why we didn't add any oil to the resting bowl. It really doesn't need any. Look at it coming out so nicely. And with this tiny bit here, I can just use the scraper. So pretty. So right now what we want to do is to first form it into a more even shape and then divide it into 8 equal parts. Sort of shape it into a log, I guess. Easy way to get it pieces. I'm just doing things very roughly. You can divide it however you like. So that's 552 divided by 8. That's about 69 grams, which is, yeah, all right. So, okay. I'm gonna use this one instead, flat edge, better for cutting. All right, so now that we've divided all the pieces, what we want to do next is to pre-shape them into tight, round little dough balls. So it's quite important to get a smooth surface. This is going to help us tremendously. It's going to really help us get that smooth bagel skin. So make sure you do it nice and tight. It's an easy way to do it. Center and roll it in your palm. So I'm going to take this piece here. We're going to make sure it's fully degassed. Should be pretty easy to do that. And then we're going to fold all edges into the center just to build surface tension on the back side. Again, the dough can be a little bit sticky, so you can use flour to minimize it. Just fold the edges down until you feel tension on the other side, and you can start rubbing it with your palm to get it more round. Alright. And of course, it's best if you get an assistant to help you with your work, because that makes things a lot more convenient, faster. You can slowly start giving them more work.
Slower.
I have to say, I really love it when I really like rounding dough balls like this. I think it's so much fun. It looks so smooth, it looks so nice, and I'm just going to arrange them neatly. So these are now going to take a bench rest for about 20 minutes until they relax and they sort of expand a bit more. That'll make it easier for us to make that bagel whole. Okay, so we're going to cover it to prevent it from drying out. Great, so 20 minutes have passed now. I'm just going to open this up, and our dough look pretty well relaxed. So we're going to get into shaping now. Now, there are a couple of methods to shape bagels, and what we're doing is probably the most beginner-friendly one. Okay, so take the dough, then get a bit of flour on the center, make sure it's really well rounded, nice and pretty, and then we're just going to use our finger and pierce the dough, twirling it a bit around. And then just roll it over our knuckles to make the hole a little wider. That's pretty good. A bit wider. If the hole is a bit too small, then it's going to quickly fill in. So making sure it's big enough to show. And then we're going to put it on our parchment paper that was lined with flour. This is how I organize it so they have growing space. So bagels are very forgiving with their shaping process. You don't need to be an absolute pro. They don't have to look all exactly the same. They're very forgiving. As long as you have that hole and that round shape, they're gonna look pretty okay. All right, so we're gonna cover this again, and we're gonna let it proof for about 30 minutes. It's getting very warm here. Normally we let them proof for about 45 minutes, but we're just gonna wait and see until they double in size, which might take about 30. Okay, I'm going to cover them again. Okay, about 15 minutes before the time's up, we're going to start preheating the oven to 220 degrees Celsius. In a pot, we also want to prepare about 2 liters of water, and to it we're going to add 50 grams of molasses. You could use brown sugar or even just sugar. These additions are meant to add a mild flavor to the bagels as well as help them with the browning process so that they come out of the oven a bit darker in color. So we want to bring the entire pot to a boil, making sure that the temperature hits above 90 degrees Celsius. Okay, the time is up, our bagels are fully proofed, and the boiling water is also ready, which means it's time to boil the bagels. So we have a slotted spoon here and a wooden spatula, perfect for turning over the bagels and for getting them out of the pot. So we want to make sure not to overcrowd the pot. We don't want too many bagels in at one time. We normally let the bagels boil for 30 seconds on each side, but you could do it for up to over a minute on each side. The longer the bagels are boiled, the thicker and chewier their crust becomes. When we put the bagels in, the boiling water will basically set and gelatinize the outer layer of the dough, forming a relatively hard shell that prevents the dough from expanding too much. More specifically, this boiling process sets the protein structure in the dough and gelatinizes the starches. This is part of what makes bagels so characteristically dense and chewy, unlike, say, a regular bread. This boiling is also what gives the bagels their shiny appearance. And I will say, they are going to be a bit wrinkly, but that's okay because they're going to just expand a bit more in the oven. And then when they're done with their boiling session, we're going to pull the bagels out and place them onto a wire rack to let some of that excess water drip. While they're still wet, this is when you would want to give them their toppings. So if you wanted to sprinkle them with sesame seeds or something, but we prefer them plain, so we're just going to bake them now. And we're baking them at 220 degrees Celsius on top and bottom heat for about 25 to 30 minutes or until they turn a dark golden brown. Bagels need to be baked at a pretty high temperature to give them that nice brown crust because they don't contain many ingredients that promote browning, such as fats and sugars. And they're done! So these bagels are best eaten on the day they're made, but they can be kept for a bit longer thanks to the Tangzhong. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching and bye!